Alright, so what's up, people? Basically, my goal here is to just help you guys. Basically, had a lot of questions on my Discord on how to drive faster and make certain things, and I don't know what the title of this video is gonna be, but yeah, this video is just kind of on the spot. So, obviously, let me clear the first thing out of the room, and that is no gamepad assists. You all know that. You have to learn to get rid of them, because now that with Evo being out, many people are having issues driving on Evo because they found it too difficult, challenging, and to some cars it's just very, they do a lot. And that's exactly what I experienced in Assetto Corsa because of how I set my settings up. I set it up in a way that I control the car. I'm the reason that the car does a certain thing, whereas I don't have to rely on any other thing. And so when I'm given a car that I've never driven before, I am able to understand it and take control of it because I'm not relying on anything. And so that's why not having assist is just a good habit just for any title. And then my controls. Now my Discord on announcements, I have made some changes to my steering settings, and essentially what I did was increase my steering speed. I mean, you can see it here. I had it set for GT3s and whatnot, and that was essentially how I used to drive mainly. It just made more sense. I had obviously with heavier cars, you have the opportunity to just be more aggressive, whereas with much more sensitive cars and lighter cars, you don't really get to do that. At least that's what I thought. But then I chose to experiment with that, and I found out that it was actually better. I reached a point where I had enough experience to be able to do that because I have precise steering controls, so I know I could do that, and it actually made me much better. Normally I said that was simply for rally and whatnot, but what changed now is that these cars, like mostly the more recent cars, like the 2026 vehicle, the VRC 2024, the Formula Beta and whatnot, those cars have become very sensitive, and very much reliant on how you drive it. They're so much more challenging to drive, and the only way you can actually drive that car is if you do more than what the car gives you. So it's like if the car is oversteering, you need to be able to control that oversteer and all that stuff. And so like with a slow steering speed, you're not going to be able to keep up with what the car is giving you, and that's how I felt. But again, if you're new, start slow, start with a low speed steering speed, and then work your way up. It's gonna work. Steering gamma, now this is between, okay, so for this car I have two specific. One is 199. I don't know, it just happened to be really good for formula cars, open wheelers and everything, as well as like heavier cars, GT3s and everything, LMPH. But 215 is also really good. I think that if I do 215, I'll probably find some extra pace because sometimes my car becomes a little too oversteer or too, like, it starts to wiggle a little more, which is what I like. I feel like I've been able to adapt my driving style. I don't mind car unpredictabilities. I'm able to like handle that, but 215 I think fixes that problem. Then additional systems and settings, same thing. I want to see if I changed anything. I think the only thing that I've changed was one keybind, and that is for an app that I'm going to show you guys. All right, so my goal in this video is to basically just learn this track, Bahrain. I mean, I know a little bit of Bahrain, and since Bahrain is coming up, I guess it just made sense to make a video on it. I haven't done an Hotlap in Bahrain, and so I want to just walk it through with you guys. I just break it down, what I go through, the things that I do to learn a track. You're gonna see the ups and downs, the mistakes, the spin outs and all that stuff, so I'll try to make it as raw as possible. As a first, we start with the setups, understanding how I want to go out for the first run. Now if it's a league race and I don't know the track at all, I just go raw with no changes at all, and then I'll work from there. Let's actually do that, because I think you might be in a position where you might not have an app like this where you're able to find setups. Okay, so normally I already understand how the car is behaving just by the outlap alone, so I can already start making changes from this point on, I can understand that the car is very loose on the rear end, so that's one thing that I gotta change for sure. Yeah, even on entry, even before, just as soon as I left the throttle, I immediately felt the rear sliding. Yeah, okay. It's very hard to attack a corner. Ideally, you want to be aggressive when it comes to learning the track. I mean, I mean, everyone has a different learning style. But mine is from a top down. I basically try to stress the car in every corner and then dial it down. Okay. So various steer assist, I don't know what this does, but I always leave it at 0 because I just don't feel like, I think it affects something, I don't know. With the tires, so far we're not going to change anything in the tires. We're not going to change the fuel because again, like, we want to get the same laps. Normally what I do is I normally start setting laps and then I start changing the setup and then comparing those lap times. There are times where the car is very hard to handle, and so what I do is I just make changes right away because I know I can. And another thing is that I go to YouTube, either YouTube or Google, and I find a hot lap, someone who did a hot lap on this track with this car. So I need to find a benchmark so that we do hot lap, and I just gonna go through. Sometimes I just paste it there and I look. Another thing is, if you have this app, Setup Exchange, I'll probably leave a link, or I think you might be able to get it if you click app shelf. Yeah, so basically if you go here, all apps, you type app, right? You open app shelf, Setup Exchange is right there, so you can get that. Looking at the setup names and stuff like that, I can tell that the 24s is probably 24.3. This guy can whatever, he did a 24.3 with the 2024. I think the 2024 and the hybrid 26s are pretty similar, so if you have if there's a similar hot lap, a similar car doing a hot lap on the track, you could probably use that as a benchmark as well. So 24.3, 24s is essentially the benchmark. So let's try to iron out all the problems that we have, and that was the rear wing, right? The rear wing is definitely one to change because if you lower it, as it says here, the lower the value, the more lively the rear is going to be, so it's going to be more loose, and you get to have more top speed with that, but also it comes at the cost of a more oversteery car. So depending on your driving style, you might have to dial it up if you like a more understeery car, or down if you like a more oversteery car, but that's not the only setting that you can change. So I'm gonna keep it, I don't know where it was, what value was at. Now the ARB rear, this is another one that's super critical. This is what I use to fix that rear problem. Around the 5,000 10,000 is my range, I think, depending on the car. Sometimes I get to play with a little more rear. Again, it depends on the track, the conditions, and how much I've learned, because sometimes by the time I adapt to the car, I feel more confident to just dial it up or whatever. We can move on. Also, another thing is that if you're having trouble accelerating, your rear spin as soon as you accelerate, diff preload is the thing that will fix that. By default at 15 on most cars, so when you see diff preload, just make sure you tank it up a little bit. I'll probably do like 40, 50. So the goal starting out is not to obviously set the fastest lap, but just to get comfortable with the car and the track. So just understand the combo, and right away I just feel it feels far more grippy and less loosey than I was before. Obviously I approached that corner in the wrong way, but it's fine. This is an off lap, so I'm not focusing on my lines too much, but yeah, I'm still getting the feel of like, I'm not on the C5s. The goal is just to understand the track, as I said, understand my lines, where I have to brake, etc. And so my rears are still feeling very slightly loosey. Loosey is kind of funny, but yeah, so I might have to work on that maybe. But okay, that was horrible, but whatever. But that's fine. We can still set the hot lap. Let's set our first outlet. Let's just see how we truly feel. Nearly lost it there. So this is why it's super important to understand your car off like and have really good vibrations, because let me just finish this lap. Because if it hadn't been for my vibration, I would have lost it there. Okay, so 35. So we're about 12 seconds off the pace. That's no problem. Yeah, on braking, that's where the car fell oversteer. Yeah, so this is the moment where I knew I was gonna lose the car. I felt as if my vibration was completely like empty. When your vibrations feel soulless and they feel empty, you just don't hear anything, you don't feel anything. They're silent. It's probably telling you there's no your car has lost grip and stuff. It's hard to know how my vibrations felt because it's more of a muscle memory thing. In that moment, again, I knew exactly what was happening and I was able to counteract it right away. If this was me years ago when I first started, I would have been counter steering like crazy. I would have been trying to steer left and then right and then back left. That looked like a cool little drift as well. I don't know from what angle I can get it, but whatever. If we go over here, yeah, here I knew from this moment, I knew exactly that I wasn't gonna make that corner, because if I try to push the car in, to steer the car in, I would have lost my rear, and so I had to take it. I had to force myself wide until I had enough grip. And all of this you understand it through vibration. So it's really important to just understand how to drive with your vibration, understand what your vibration is telling you. So obviously these lap times are not for Bahrain specifically. So I don't know, these laps are not for Bahrain specifically, but normally when you show the setups for the current track, obviously here we see the track, and you see a specific time, that's probably the time this car can achieve. I always think about the straights and how many straights there are and whether having top speed would be a benefit, and if not, then I would go for a setup that would probably be more beneficial in the corners. So I would try Losail first. Normally there are setups for this. So now I realize that the rear wing that we once had was actually 15 and not 10. So that's why I probably had some issues with the rear. I think that would have been fixed if I kept it at 15. However, I was still able to control it. Keep it at 15 because I think 15 might be okay. For me, all these suspension rebound, travel, all that stuff, I don't see the difference. I might feel the difference, but I don't but I don't know what changes what. And so I change normally the toes when I need to, the preload, of course. So we keep it at 50. The brake bias for sure, I think 55 was okay. I think we can go like 56 or 57. So I'll do 57. I can obviously change it while I'm on track, so that's not a problem. Height is also another important thing, and ARB front. ARB front obviously allows you to change how nosy your car is, how much you want to attack it, how much you want it to attack a corner and stuff. I normally don't change any of that until I feel like the car needs more turning. But I think I'm gonna dial back, so I'm gonna take the one for Qatar. And apparently he had 20 20 wing. If he did 20 in Qatar, which has a lot of high-speed corners, I'll probably do 22 in Bahrain. You can lower the liters, because again, I'm trying to speed this up. But sometimes the tracks that I get to learn quicker, I get to, maybe 20 minutes is all I need to find the best time. So other times they're where I need a little more time. So yeah, steer setting, steer assist there. So yeah, that's all I have for now. Now we try to understand more of the track, um, more of where we want to place our cars for entry and exits, etc. And I just went off like crazy. You have to remember that if you really want to get good on gamepad, you have to use the joystick up technique. That's the only way you're gonna be really quick, because doing this right from left to right is really not gonna work out. I see people still do that, and they complain. We controllers are gonna still have we all have drawbacks. There's still a drawback in having a control and driving with a controller, because this is a game meant for wheel players and not for controllers. So it's not gonna be perfect, but the goal is to minimize the amount of problems, and I think that having the joystick up definitely helps with that. So just learn to get used to pulling your joystick up whenever you're about to approach a corner. That's what I do. When you're on the straight, you can just kind of let go of it, because it helps you reduce fatigue on your finger. Or unless you're side to side again with someone, then that makes sense. But for the most part, I don't feel the need to do that. Uh, okay. So yeah, as you can see, I'm just going a little bit off the track, but that's pretty normal, and that's exactly how you want to be learning the car, learning how to master the track. You really just want to find the limits, right? As soon as you find the limit, you just make sure you just don't get over that. Okay, so I feel like this car is very oversteery. I mean understeery, so I have to make some changes to that. The app that I use for the electronics is called the electronics control panel, if I see it. Yeah, there we go. I will leave a link to the description. Uh, I mean, in the description of the video to get it. You can just keep on your stuff here. It's really cool, really helpful. And the beauty is that, I mean, it normally interferes with your pit menu, but there's a button to switch it off. And so whenever I'm about to go into the pits, I just turn it off and I turn it back on when I get out the pits. So it saves me a lot of buttons to bind, so it's been pretty helpful. Also, another technique that I have when driving on track is with the throttle. So basically, when I'm on the straight, I don't need to keep my finger on the trigger, but rather I can keep the body of my finger on the trigger, because obviously if you're doing like a 40 lap race or something, that finger is gonna feel tired, you know. And so to mitigate that when you're in the straight, when you don't need to turn, um, you can just keep the body of your finger on the trigger, and it's amazing. Let's try to get another lap in. Because I want to understand how far I want to be able to brake. Okay, I lost a lot on the strike. So 32. So I need to find an additional 4 seconds. So if I can find 3 seconds, I think that I'll be happy with that. My goal is to just help you guys understand what's going through my head, obviously when I'm league racing or whatever. I'm thinking about high in the front wing to 30. I'm gonna max it out, see what happens, and then I'm gonna lower it to 60,000 to get more front end. So with trail braking, so I'll go through trail braking a little bit. So one thing that you've noticed me doing, obviously for these 2 laps, is that I have been trail braking, and that's something that I do by muscle memory, and that was just a result of a lot of practice. And so basically, what the whole point of trail braking is to maximize rotation. Okay, so I realized that 100 meters is definitely not it. So we might have to brake a little bit further than that. 100 for this might be okay. This car needs a lot of lifting here. Yes, in this moment I locked up, but I was able to still make the corner because I was trail braking, and then essentially trail braking is just applying a little bit of braking as you're entering the corner, but not too much to lock up, because obviously if you brake a certain amount and you're still turning, you're gonna lock up, of course. That's when the lock up happens. But if you're, let's say, braking maybe 10%, you're holding 10% brake, or 20 maybe, nothing happens at all. So that's the essence of trail braking, and it happens only at low speeds, you know, on your way into a corner. Okay, so one thing I definitely noticed in this change is that um, the nose definitely dives in more, so which is good. So that's really good. So now it's just about getting a better lap time. Okay, so we're 2 seconds up. Um, oh no, I messed up big time. I messed up big time. Okay, well, 2 seconds up. So that was good. I think I need 2 more seconds to find the time that I'm aiming for, which is the 27s, 28s. Yeah. Again, you never want to drop the throttle like aggressively. You always wanna bring it all the way to 0. It's a good practice. Obviously, there are other tracks where you get to do that. You have to be more aggressive, but ideally, it's a good practice to do that because it's definitely gonna help you a lot. So let's see. So there, that required minimal braking, as you can see. Just notice how much braking I actually use. Very little, and no, and from this point I realized that I needed a really good turn in, because if you try to brake anywhere, if you try to make the corner anywhere here, you would go wide, and so I had to go as wide as I possibly can and trail brake myself into the corner. And as you can see there, I went from 50 to 40, 30, 20, 10. So yeah, that's just trail braking. It's pretty simple. Um, it just requires practice to understand it. Yeah, let's go through this one again, because I think this is one of the most trickiest corners. Yeah, there, as you can see right there, I never went above the 70s. Like, that's 50, 30, 20. Yeah, there we go. And then I still applied a little bit more. to ensure that I was gonna make it into the corner, and by this point I was already 2 seconds up. So at this point, this is only, I think, the end of sector 2, and we found almost all the time that I need to achieve that lap time. So we now know the sectors we do well, and we just try to replicate that. So I hope that I explained trail braking, because I don't see many people explaining, but even those who do find it a hard time to explain it, and I don't think I explained it any better, to be honest. But it's always better to learn it visually. In the process of learning the track, one thing you're gonna see me do is this, like that, probably somewhere during the corner. When you see me do that, that's because I'm trying to understand the grip of the car. Like when I do this, yeah, when I do this, I feel the vibration. I feel it's subtle, but I still feel it. And obviously, as I gain more speed, it becomes a little more intense. I feel a little bit more, yeah. Essentially, like into a corner, I do that to feel the grip, you know. And so essentially, like just there, I do that to feel the grip, to remind myself how much grip I have, and then based on that information, I try to make the corner. So with doing corrections, honestly, it's pretty straightforward. One thing you need to understand when doing correction is that don't over exaggerate. Do as many corrections as you need, as your car needs. So sometimes go as little as one. So let's say even if you catch a massive snap, don't do all of that, because you might not need that. You might just need a subtle movement, you know. But sometimes you might not need any at all. Your car is actually grippier than you think. Oh boy. Okay, so in that moment, yeah, that was the drift preload, right? So when you get into that corner, normally there's a point where there's like a window of grip, and then once you get past that window, you have to pay attention to so that in this moment, I should have remained full throttle around that area, because there is track elevation, right? And so once you get into a certain part of the track, the car is definitely going to feel different, and so you need to understand that. And so I already made a very bad entry. The entry was okay, but I think I was too late in getting on throttle, as you can see there. Because normally at this point you're already on throttle, you're already on your way there. I got on throttle and then I left it again. So essentially it does something to the car where you're now in a position where you have to pay attention to your rear. So it's like, it's hard to explain, but it's something that you definitely get. So notice how I'm always on like 10%. Like I can remain that. This is how good my controller is. Like I can just remain at 10% with no issues, and I don't even have to look at it. Like you need to understand, because usually when I first started driving on Assetto, I used to have my pedals up. I used to have like this, and I used to have it here just to make sure that I know what I was doing. And I think that's a good practice for you guys to have your pedals, know what you're doing. And then eventually I just got more used to it, and I didn't need to. I can turn everything off and still drive perfectly fine. Let me try now to do a correction. I'm gonna force myself into an oversteer. Okay, so that first one didn't do anything. So these cars are pretty tricky, can be pretty tricky. I mean, Assetto Corsa, the physics are not the best. So sometimes there are cars that you just, I don't know, as soon as you get into an oversteer, you're in autopilot. There's nothing you can do. I felt the grip, by the way. When I did this, yeah, when I made that correction, I felt the grip afterward. I felt like, it worked. It was the next one. When you make corrections, you gotta make sure that you lower your throttle input, because if you're still at 180 whatever, and you keep the same amount of throttle while making those corrections, you're likely to spin no matter what. But if you drop the throttle, like as you can see there, I think that's exactly why I was okay. Notice when I made that oversteer, I mean the counter steer, you see I was at 0. As soon as I was done doing the counter steer, I went back on throttle, right? right there, right, and but I definitely applied a little too much. I was at around 60. I probably should have been in the 30s, maybe. I'm not sure. I hope that was understandable because I don't know. Sometimes I don't even know what I'm saying. But and I did, I think, 3 laps. I mean, it says 12, but I actually did like 3 to 4 laps actual. The rest were just me talking the whole time. Another good example is to drive very some cars that are sensitive to a particular aspect of driving. For example, braking. For example, the Formula E's are very sensitive to braking, and so you have to be really cautious with how you brake. And so that you could drive that car to understand the essence of braking. I might actually do a couple laps with that. There's some certain GT3 cars, maybe like the Porsche, or I don't know, or the Lamborghini, and the Ferrari, the 296 GT3, I think, have you need a lot of rear control, and so using those cars will definitely train you better. Oh boy, that was good, but oh, whoa, that was unexpected. Okay, yeah, okay, yeah. As soon as I think it's as soon as I activated my DRS, I think that's the moment I yeah, as soon as okay, yeah, well that's just a characteristic of these cars. I mean, it just happened. It's a Assetto, so you just gotta live with it. Don't shy away from mistakes. Don't shy away from spin outs, constant spin outs, because that's part of the learning curve. Now let's just try to get a good lap in and call it a day, I think.